It takes approximately 18 months for the wilderness to erase all trace of a person. 18 months of snow and thaw, of silence and forgetting, of the slow, patient work of nature, reclaiming what was once human. But what happened to Charles McCullar at Crater Lake defies everything we understand about that process. On October 18th, 1976, a park ranger lifted a VW key from a weathered backpack and overlaid it against a photocopy kept in the missing persons file. The two rangers watching him would later describe an electric charge passing through the room as the key made a perfect fit. They had found Charles McCullar, or rather, they had found what was left of him. What the search party discovered that afternoon, scattered across a steep embankment 4 miles from the nearest road, would haunt investigators for decades. Fragments of what had once been a young man, pieces of clothing, and something else. Something that one ranger would later describe in terms so unsettling that researchers have debated its meaning ever since. The ranger who found him gave McCullar a name that would echo through decades of research: the vanishing photographer of Crater Lake. And what that phrase actually refers to is something we'll return to later in this account. In January of 1975, Charles Wesley McCullar was 19 years old. A photographer from Alexandria, Virginia, with a dream that would be familiar to anyone who has ever felt the pull of the American wilderness. He wanted to visit every national park in the country and capture each one through his lens. He had been traveling cross-country for weeks, visiting friends in Michigan, Arizona, and California, making his way slowly westward with his camera equipment and an optimism that seemed boundless. His family would later describe him as the type of person who always kept in touch, who always had a plan, who always let someone know where he would be. On January 29, 1975, Charles was staying with a female classmate in Eugene, Oregon. While she attended her college classes, he announced his intention to take a 2-day trip to Crater Lake National Park. He wanted to photograph the lake in winter, when the caldera would be draped in snow, when the water would glow that impossible, otherworldly blue against the white. For a photographer, Crater Lake in winter would be irresistible. The lake sits in a collapsed volcanic crater, nearly 2,000 feet deep, so clear and still that it acts like a mirror reflecting the sky. In summer, tourists crowd the rim, pointing cameras at the obvious beauty. But in winter, the park empties. The silence becomes absolute, and the contrast between the blue water and the white snow creates images that seem to belong to another planet entirely. Charles understood this. A winter photograph of Crater Lake would be something special, something most photographers never bothered to capture because the conditions were too harsh, the access too difficult. He told his friend he would return by January 31st, and he gave her specific instructions. If he wasn't back by February 1st, report him missing. It was a responsible thing to do, the kind of precaution a careful person takes before venturing into the wilderness alone in winter in one of the snowiest places in North America. What Charles may not have fully understood was just how extreme the conditions at Crater Lake had become. The previous 2 weeks had delivered over 5 feet of fresh snow. Cross-country skiers who ventured into the park reported that even with skis, they were sinking up to their waists in powder so soft and deep, it was like trying to walk through frozen clouds. Snow depths ranged from 2 feet at lower elevations to nearly the 8 feet at the rim. The north entrance road was closed. The rim road was impassable, except in the immediate vicinity of Rim Village. And Charles McCullar had no skis, no snowshoes. His only shelter was a plastic sheet. Charles took a Greyhound bus from Eugene toward the park, a journey of approximately 126 miles through the Cascade Range. The last confirmed sighting of him alive came on January 30th at the Dry Creek store on Route 138 near Diamond Lake. Witnesses remembered a young man matching his description, friendly, eager, carrying camera equipment. At some point that day, a park ranger gave a ride to a young man matching Charles's description, driving him from the Diamond Lake area to the Crater Lake entrance. Why the ranger allowed him to continue on foot in those conditions remains unclear. Perhaps Charles seemed confident. Perhaps the ranger assumed he knew what he was doing. Perhaps it simply wasn't the ranger's place to stop a determined young man from making his own choices. Whatever the reason, Charles McCullar walked into Crater Lake National Park that afternoon. Into snow that was waist deep, even for people wearing skis. And no one ever saw him again. February 1st, 1975. Charles did not return. His friend in Eugene waited one more day, just as he had instructed, then contacted the authorities. Within hours, Crater Lake National Park initiated search operations. But the wilderness does not cooperate with human urgency. Shortly after Charles's arrival at the park, another 34 inches of snow fell, blanketing any tracks he might have left, burying any traces of his passage beneath a white shroud that would not lift for months. Aerial searches were launched, but from above, the park was an endless expanse of white on white ground. Searches were attempted, but the snow was simply too deep, too unstable, too dangerous for teams to effectively penetrate the backcountry. Posters were distributed. Public alerts were issued. Weeks passed with no trace of the young photographer. Charles McCullar's father flew to Oregon twice that spring. He spent much of the summer of 1975 camped at various locations within the park, personally searching the northern sector where his son was believed to have entered. Park personnel and Youth Conservation Corps volunteers conducted a thorough grid search along the North Entrance Road. They walked shoulder to shoulder through terrain that was slowly revealing itself as the snow retreated. They checked every depression, every cluster of trees, every place where someone might have taken shelter. They found nothing. As the months stretched on, hope faded, but never entirely died. Several uncashed traveler's checks in Charles's name were never cashed anywhere in the country. $100 his father had sent to him in Yuma, Arizona weeks before his disappearance was never picked up. These small details haunted the family. Charles had always been responsible with money. He would not have simply abandoned funds that were waiting for him. The money sat waiting. The family sat waiting. And Crater Lake kept its secrets beneath the snow, beneath the ice, beneath the silence that had swallowed a 19-year-old photographer without leaving a single trace. October 13th, 1976. 20 months after Charles McCullar vanished. Two hikers from Texas were making their way along the Pacific Crest Trail in a remote section of the park when they stumbled upon a badly weathered backpack and a set of keys lying near Bybee Creek, a tributary of the Rogue River that cuts through some of the most inaccessible terrain in the park. They assumed someone had simply lost their belongings. They collected the items and, the following day, turned them over to the chief ranger. When the ranger overlaid one of the keys against the photocopied key from the McCullar file, The match was exact. On October 18th, a horse patrol led by Rangers Marion Jack and Dave Lang set out for the Bybee Creek drainage. At 1:30 in the afternoon, the radio call came through to park headquarters. 3 words that would close one chapter and open another, far more perplexing one. We have found him. The site was located approximately 5 to 6 miles by trail from Rim Drive, roughly 1,000 feet below the outer rim of Crater Lake. It was on the opposite bank of a steep embankment that dropped away at a 60% slope for more than 200 yards. The closest road was a Forest Service logging road 4 miles away. This was wilderness in the truest sense of the word, primordial, indifferent, unchanged by the small dramas of human tragedy. Chief Ranger Dan Shawley, who had joined the park just months after McCullar's disappearance, described what they found with careful precision. Evidence that Charles had been there, scattered over and down the steep bank. What remained had been dispersed by weather and time, distributed across the terrain in a pattern that spoke of months of exposure to the elements. Camping gear, weathered fragments of clothing, the backpack and keys the hikers had found, personal effects that investigators would later catalog and document. But there was something else, something that Ranger Marion Jack would later describe in an interview that has since become well known among researchers of unexplained disappearances. Something that did not fit neatly into the standard narrative of a man who simply became lost in the wilderness. And this is where we must address the detail I mentioned at the beginning. According to accounts attributed to the Rangers who recovered what remained, they found something that defied easy explanation. Clothing that was still intact, still in position, as if whoever had worn it had simply vanished from within. The fabric remained, but what had filled it was gone. It was this strange detail that gave McCullar his enigmatic reputation among researchers. Now, I must be clear about something. This specific detail does not appear in the official FBI reports or the correspondence sent to Senator William L. Scott, who investigated the case at the family's request. The official records describe only scattered fragments and weathered personal effects. Researcher Michael C. Bouchard, who wrote a book-length investigation of the case using previously unreleased documents, has dismissed the more sensational claims as later inventions. Additions made to make an already mysterious story sound even stranger. But the Rangers were there, Marion Jack was there, and the questions persisted. Whether or not the specific details are accurate, one thing remained undeniable. Charles McCullar was found in a location that seemed impossible for him to have reached. Consider the geography. The Bybee Creek drainage is approximately 14 miles from the north entrance, where Charles was last seen. 14 miles through terrain that was, at the time of his disappearance, buried under 105 inches of new snow. Charles had no skis, no snowshoes. His only equipment was a camera, a plastic sheet, and whatever supplies he carried in his pack. How did a 19-year-old, unprepared for winter conditions, traverse 14 miles through snow that was sinking experienced skiers to their waists? Chief Ranger Shawley called it a mystery. The FBI was called in to complete the investigation. Oregon State Police Crime Lab examiners flew in by helicopter to examine the site. Their conclusion? McCullar had likely become lost while attempting to hike to park headquarters. With 100 inches of snow on the ground, Bybee Creek would have been completely hidden beneath the white surface. He probably crossed the creek on top of the snow and fell through into a crevice where he perished from exposure. The official conclusion was natural causes. There was no evidence of anything other than exposure to the elements, an accident in the wilderness. Case closed. Except, not everyone was satisfied with that conclusion. Charles McCullar's father remained convinced until his passing that something more had happened to his son. The evidence to him pointed in a different direction. Charles's expensive camera equipment was never found. His money was never recovered. The traveler's checks were never cashed. In correspondence with the FBI and Senator Scott, McCullar's father theorized that his son had encountered someone in the wilderness, that his belongings had been taken. The investigators found no evidence to support this theory. No signs of any encounter. No witnesses. Nothing to suggest anything other than a wilderness accident. But the questions remained. How did he get there? Why would a photographer heading for the scenic rim end up in one of the most remote drainages in the park, miles from any viewpoint worth photographing? And then there is the detail that transforms this case from tragedy to something closer to pattern. In 2006, evidence of another missing person was discovered in the same remote Bybee Creek area. After investigation, the discovery was confirmed to be connected to Glenn Allen Mackey, a 33-year-old California man whose vehicle had been found abandoned at the Rim Village parking lot in October 1991. Mackey's driver's license, keys, passport, cash, and toiletries were all in his car. But no trace of Mackey himself was ever found, until a firefighter stumbled upon evidence of his presence in the same drainage where Charles McCullar had been discovered 30 years earlier. Two men, decades apart, both ending up in the same remote location. Coincidence is an easy word to use, but Bybee Creek is a long stretch of water, and the wilderness is vast. The odds of two unrelated missing persons cases terminating in the same obscure drainage are worth considering. Let us examine what we know with certainty. Charles McCullar walked into Crater Lake National Park on January 30th, 1975, with inadequate equipment for winter conditions. He vanished. 20 months later, evidence of his fate was found in a location approximately 14 miles from his last known position, in terrain that should have been nearly impossible to traverse. The official explanation is exposure to the elements. He became lost, fell through the snow into a crevice above Bybee Creek, and succumbed to the cold. This explanation is plausible. It is the simplest answer. And in cases where the wilderness is involved, the simplest answer is usually correct. But it does not explain how he covered the distance. It does not explain why his camera was never found. It does not explain why, 30 years later, another man would end up in the same place. Some researchers have suggested that the topography itself funnels lost hikers toward Bybee Creek, that the landscape creates a natural drainage toward that specific location. When disoriented in heavy snow, people tend to follow downhill paths, seeking lower elevations where the cold might be less severe. Bybee Creek sits in a depression that could naturally attract confused travelers moving through the wilderness. This is possible. Others have suggested that the creek itself represents some kind of hazard, a place where the terrain is unstable, where snow bridges form over running water and collapse under human weight, trapping people in icy crevices from which there is no escape. The official theory suggests this is exactly what happened to Charles. This too is possible. And some have suggested that there are things in the wilderness we do not understand, patterns we cannot explain, forces that operate beyond the reach of investigation. I will not tell you what to believe. I will only tell you what was found. Today, Crater Lake National Park receives over 500,000 visitors each year. They come to see the deepest lake in America, the water that glows with a blue so pure it seems to belong to another world. They photograph the rim, the islands, the snow that lingers into summer. Very few of them venture into the Bybee Creek drainage. The Pacific Crest Trail passes through the area, and hikers still walk those paths, taking photographs, making memories, returning home to tell stories of beauty and solitude. Most of them have never heard of Charles McCullar. Most of them have never heard of Glenn Allen Mackey. The park does not advertise its mysteries. It does not erect markers at the places where people vanished. It simply continues to exist, as it has existed for thousands of years, since the volcano collapsed and the caldera filled with rain. The trees do not speak of what they have witnessed. The snow does not confess its secrets. The creek runs on, feeding into the Rogue River, carrying water toward the sea. And somewhere in the files of the National Park Service, in the correspondence with the FBI, in the faded memories of rangers who have long since retired, the name Charles McCullar persists. The vanishing photographer of Crater Lake, the young man who walked into the snow and never came out. What happened to Charles McCullar at Crater Lake suggests that in these wild places, the laws of distance and time operate differently than we expect. 14 miles through waist-deep snow, no skis, no snowshoes, no logical explanation for how he reached that final resting place. This series of documented anomalies brings us back to a fundamental question. If even a young, determined photographer could not escape this perimeter, what chance would any of us have? If you missed the beginning of this investigation, you need to return to the first file. The case of the man who vanished, leaving only his empty uniform behind. Return to the mystery of Paul Fugate,